I mean, just, the personalities are a little different than, our old coach and, Coach Golding. I'd say he's more of like a team guy. And, we really value, his leadership, whatever he says. He's kind of show you fast as I could tell, or he's show you fast as I could tell you. He leads by his actions, and, we really appreciate that.
He used the words, our previous coach, the other coach. Yesterday we were talking about Lane Kiffin, not mentioning Ole Miss by name. Welcome into Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani. In case you didn't hear it in the intro, what is your name?
I'm Gabriella Genereaux. Okay, Patrick. Patrick's like, what is she doing on
My
here?
bad. See, when you're just so used to it being the same thing for forever, it's like one of those accidental, like, I don't know what you call it, habits, I guess. Like one of those accidental habits. Oh, I hear Gerhard's name. Oh, let me hit it right away. So that way I hit it on time. But don't worry.
It's all good. It was just the first time they mentioned my name on the intro, but no worries.
The good news is we do have an intro for hour 2, and I'll make sure I don't mess that up.
And this is really
kidding.
this is really timely, by the way, because when Patrick was in Buffalo last week, a couple of weeks ago, I caught nothing but strays from this girl, her mom, everybody would like literally anything that screwed up one time. It was like this never happens with Patrick. Everything with Patrick goes so smoothly.
Now they can complain about Patrick today because he cut my name off in the intro, but it's all good.
Well, I can complain about Tennessee.
Yeah, as we all can. Coming up on today's show, we got a good 2 hours coming your way. Our topics today will discuss this growing beef between Ole Miss and LSU, kind of soft shots fired, kind of a Cold War-ish little beef there between Baton Rouge and Oxford. And we also go out to Oklahoma. Their softball team absolutely rolling, set in large part by their superstar who already has a single season record. Yes, we're just in April. Meanwhile, men's golf for tennis, for I should say Texas, is heating up. They're a top 10 team right now in the country. And South Carolina looking to exact a little revenge on UConn in the women's Final Four. We will break it all down with the Texas men's golf coach in Josh Fields, and we'll go out to Spartanburg and catch up with our good friend Mariah Ross as South Carolina gets ready for their big matchup with the Lady Huskies. First of all, Gabriella, let's just talk about what we discussed yesterday.
Yeah.
It was interesting because as we played the sound from Lane Kiffin, and he used the words at the previous school, at the previous stop.
Right.
The most roundabout way to not say Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then it might have been a situation where the Ole Miss people heard it because it's coming back the other way around.
Right. But I also think in this case scenario with Trinidad, it's almost like the way that the season ended for Ole Miss, or with Lane Kiffin deciding to go to LSU, he didn't even show up to the team meeting to let the Ole Miss players know. He just hopped on the plane and went on over to LSU. He also, wasn't there for their playoff run that they were able to make. So I understand it from this side in a way, because Trinidad was like, hey, you were my coach. Like, I chose to play for you. You were supposed to believe in me. And when we make it to the playoffs, you go to a school because you said that you have more playoff and championship potential there when you're coaching a team that was in the playoffs.
Right. We'll have a peek behind the curtain a little bit. She is trying to get me to watch some drama-filled shows, some reality TV shows, and we'll get into that in a moment. But Patrick, I want your input on this because Ole Miss and LSU is the season opener in the SEC for these two squads. This has to add just a lot more drama to what was already going to be a really interesting game.
Well, it's April 1st, and this is not an April Fool's joke, but I'm glad we've got the topic of the offseason in April rather than I think it was in July last year about Hugh Freeze and, how much golf he plays in the offseason.
Right.
This is the offseason topic that gives us something to talk about. I mean, we could talk for hours about this because these two programs didn't really like each other before, definitely don't like each other right now. This could be a top 2 rivalry in the SEC just because of all the hatred right now. But, I mean, there's so much expectation going in for both teams. Obviously, LSU, we talked about them yesterday, dished out a ton of money to not only transfer portal players, not only recruits, but also to Lane Kiffin to get him to come to Baton Rouge from Oxford. And then you take a look at the other side, Pete Golding. A lot of people wrote him off and said, this Ole Miss team is too distracted. They can't do anything in the college football playoff last year, and they rattled off one of the best runs that they've ever had in program history. So it's just I can't wait already. I know we're 5 months away from the first kickoff, but I mean, those 5 months can't come by any sooner.
No question about it. It is interesting because Ole Miss has the track record of success. How much of that was Lane Kiffin? We'll find out when he goes to LSU. And now LSU, with their expectations, we talked with Jess Boucher and Brian Holland. Everybody is like, hey, this time in 2027 or 2028, if he doesn't make a college football playoff, it feels like a failure. If he doesn't maybe win a championship in the next 4 or 5, it feels like a failure as well. Rate this beef, by the way. You're a fan of drama.
I do love
You
drama.
like the drama. There's so what's the Love Island? You're trying
Love
to get
Island,
it yeah,
that drama is fire right now.
I mean, any reality TV show, I'm trying to get Gerhard to watch because I love all of them.
Yeah, and I love none, but I'm trusting your judgment to like point me in the direction of the ones that deserve my attention.
Yeah, and Love Island's definitely going to be top of the list for you this summer.
I love it. All right, so rate this drama, this football drama. I know you have to kind of grade on the curve because, I mean, we're talking about them not saying each other's names, but considering just how close they all were, kumbaya 365 days ago, it does feel a little more interesting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I eat this type of stuff up. I remember when all of this was going down and we were trying to figure out if Lane was going to go to LSU during the playoffs last year. I mean, I was on top of it. I was watching every second of what was going down there. So, I mean, it's part of the game.
Let's go to Marty Smith again.
It's part of the game, it's part of the game, and I like it. I don't know. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe this is like a 8.
Yeah, a nice football drama. I like it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll lead to anything, in my opinion. It won't lead to anything nefarious on the field. I mean, like Ole Miss, Mississippi State can get a little weird.
Right.
And just as far as the overall personalities that are in it, what they do, and it sometimes leads to physical, a physical confrontation.
Yeah.
This to me won't rise to that. Maybe on game day it will, but leading up to it, it's kind of a nice little soft Cold War here. All right, so now back to the actual practice on the football field. Ole Miss going through practice, LSU going through practice. You saw Lane Kiffin there a moment ago. Now that it is Pete Golding's show, it's his own deal right now. It's not taking over for already hot team. Your expectations for Trinidad Shamblers, for Pete Golding, and what the Rebels are bringing back?
I'm really excited to watch Pete Golding as a head coach. I think he spent 5 years under Nick Saban at Alabama, and I think he's kind of, at least what I've seen in his first press conference from spring practice, he seems to be kind of adopting the ways that he learned from Nick Saban. He kind of has the same mentality of developing players and the importance of depth and growing not just physically but personally and mentally. So I'm excited to see what this Ole Miss team is able to do. I think they have a lot of key returners that's going to be great for this team, but they've also what Coach Golding mentioned in his press conference as well is they've also added some depth to some areas that they really needed it, especially in that running back position. So I think it's only going to help them, and I'm really excited to see what they're able to do.
No, I'm with you. And I think, too, you kind of have to put Ole Miss this season, you have to wrap your head around it in a different way. You have to think of it 2 different ways. What they did in the regular season, what they did in the postseason. And do you consider what they did in the postseason lightning in a bottle? They were Lucky's way too strong because they had a really good football team. But did they catch lightning in a bottle, or was it something substantial that could lead to actual tangible things in the fall?
I think it was substantial.
Yeah.
I think what they were able to do was come out and dominate in a physical way.
Right.
I don't think it was necessarily just luck or they had momentum. I mean, they had honestly everything going against them in a way
because of all the distractions.
All the drama everyone was talking about. They're not going to make it in this playoffs. They don't have Lane, and then they went out and won a game. So I don't chalk it up to be just luck by any means.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I do want to see it play out though, because I think if I'm putting a handicap on the Ole Miss LSU game right now, I might pick LSU as the favorite. I might. I had to see the first 2 games, obviously, but I might pick LSU as the favorite. Get some head shaking around here, like, nah, you're crazy. Patrick, the fact that they got QB1 back, RB1 back for Ole Miss this season, do you think, pose the same question to Gabriella that I did Gabriella a moment ago, is this sustainable? Is this something that they can replicate to a different degree, or do you consider last year's postseason in a bottle of itself?
I do think that on the offensive side of things, they can replicate everything that happened last year. Obviously, with Charlie Weiss Jr. leading the offense through the rest of the playoff run, but is now in LSU, they brought in a guy in John David Baker who had already been at Ole Miss before. So he knows what Oxford means to the entire state of Mississippi, and he knows what this football program can do for the state. That being said, at the same time, he was over at East Carolina last year, and they had a top 5 offense in all of college football. So I don't think there's going to be any drop-off. You still have Joe Judge as the quarterback's coach, and that's why I think Trinidad Shambles can replicate that success that he had last year. Keywan Lacey also coming back. Deuce Alexander, that's a big one coming back for Ole Miss. So I'm not necessarily worried about the offensive side of things. The part where I start to worry a little bit is the defensive side. And we saw that especially the case in the Sugar Bowl. We saw it kind of in that first round game against Tulane.
Right.
And we definitely saw it in the Miami game where they could not make a tackle at all.
Right.
And I think Miami went 10 for 19 on third down or something.
Right.
Some absolute ridiculous number that you just cannot have. And there were so many missed tackles, a few blown coverages, but not as bad as the missed tackles. So
right.
That kind of screams red flag to me just because Pete Golding is such a defensive-orientated guy. But he went out in the portal. He got Luke Farrelly, and that wasn't without all the backlash from Dabo Swinney.
Yep.
But I think this team has upgraded, even though they lost T.J. Daugherty and Prince Will Umanmielen.
Yeah, and I think that it's a sign of good coaching because, they missed tackles, but they were there. They were in position. Yeah. The coaches got them in position. The guys
got to get the guys.
Yeah, to get the guys actually down there for that. Trinidad Shambles going into last year was not QB1. He was actually QB2.
Yeah.
Austin Simmons came in as the starter for this team.
Yeah.
So developing a backup quarterback is huge. So get your thoughts here on the back end as Pete Golding talks about developing another QB2 because you just never know. You're one play away from a guy having to get replaced.
I mean, I think at every position, I would see a lot of people are going to focus on that one. But, I think you've got to develop your roster, obviously, across the board. And that was my big concern from a recruiting standpoint was the depth, right, at a lot of positions to where I felt like, over the past couple of years since I'd been here, there was a drastic difference between the first guy and the second one. And I think, with this schedule that we have and going to 9 games in the SEC, and when you get competitive, obviously the season extends, it's hard to stay healthy throughout that whole process. And so normally it happens towards the end of the year, which are the most important games, right? And then you don't have a guy, right, from a skill set standpoint that can play winning football in the SEC or the playoffs, and it's a problem. And so, last year at this time, nobody in here would have thought our number 2 going into the season was going to be the starter at the end of the year, right, and have the year that he had. So you don't know. And so I think that's the biggest thing for all of our guys, that they're preparing every day versus themselves, right, and we're trying to better our best every day. And we're all got room for improvement, right, whether we're the starter last year or not. So I'm not going to not sit here and say, there's a real battle and all. I mean, Trinidad's our quarterback. Don't get it twisted, right? But, no, a lot of things happen in this sport. So those guys are working their butt off, and obviously it's a competition at all spots. We talk about trying to play winning football. All right, and if you make more plays for us than you do against us, you're going to play. All right, obviously that's a unique position, right, where there's not a rotation like other spots and all those things. But you better have a guy that you can play winning football on deck in case something does happen. So we've got a couple guys in that room right now that are really competing, working really hard. I think it's really nice to have a guy that has been in the system come back. Obviously from a knowledge standpoint being one thing, but such a good dude. Right, and just showing you how to do it, right, and how to prepare for a meeting and how to pay attention in a meeting and how to practice. And so I think that development phase, not only for Maddox but for Deuce as well, I think is really important in that room. And then to add a veteran like Walker Howard, right, that had been here, that had been in the system, that has transferred, that went through an injury, just the maturity of that. He loves Oxford. He loves Ole Miss. He's really, really smart, so he helps those guys as well. So really like the balance in there, right, from an athletic standpoint and then obviously from an experience standpoint, but more importantly, the maturity of how to do it, how to lead, and how to be a leader for this team.
So your expectations for Trinidad Shambles going into this season, obviously the expectations are going to be sky high considering what he did last year. He got, he was ruled, eligible by the courts.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of the Heisman Trophy favorites, if not the Heisman Trophy favorite by the time August rolls around here. Your thoughts on what he could do this season?
I think he should do good things based off the expectations and based off of what we saw out of him in the playoff run last year and even throughout the season once he took the starting role. I think we saw great things out of him. And from what you're hearing from Coach Golding and company, you would expect it to be even more successful this year. They're developing him even more. They're putting even better personnel around him. So I would have a high ceiling for him.
I think that I do want to say I think he does have a high ceiling. Obviously, there's a part of me though, Patrick, and I don't know if you agree with this. I don't see the same results as last year. I really don't. I could see him still being one of the top tier quarterbacks in the SEC. I don't get the Heisman hype. I don't think he goes to New York. Agree or disagree?
Are you saying that because of all the other quarterbacks that are going to be draft
part
eligible
of it
next
too.
year?
I think it's a crowded field, number one. I think Ole Miss's schedule is relatively daunting as it relates to the defenses that they'll play. I don't know. I just see a bit of a pullback, just a little bit of a pullback.
Here's the thing. If, and this is a big if Ole Miss comes out with another top 5 offense in all of college football, I would highly doubt that Joe Judge would still be at Ole Miss next year, like the year after.
That's a good point, yeah.
Because I have been on the train where this is Joe Judge's doing because, I mean, Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. would have had no idea who Trinidad Chambliss was if Joe Judge didn't go on Twitter and saw a video of him.
Right.
So Joe Judge has been in his corner this entire time. He was also in the corner of another great former Ole Miss quarterback in Jackson Dart. So he's started to develop this track record here. I know it didn't work out with the Giants, but it's the Giants. So we need to take that with a grain of salt, please.
Sam Darnold and Robert Saleh are Exhibit A and Exhibit B.
Yeah, it's just like, what in the world are you doing, like thinking that the Giants are like a great organization? They're not. Sorry. I know our former co-host and friend has covered the Giants, and I feel bad for her every day. At the same time, if they have a good offense, he is definitely either going to get an offensive coordinator role, or he might get a head coaching opportunity in college. I don't think he's going to go back to the NFL.
Pros, yeah.
I think he really does like what he's doing right now with developing young quarterbacks. But if Ole Miss has success in 2026 on offense, it's going to be more so in part to Joe Judge rather than obviously Pete Golding isn't going to do anything with the offense. It's going to be Joe Judge more than it is John David Baker.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's a part of me that really agrees with that. And I think that also exposes your other point that without Judge, Lane Kiffin will get a little exposed there as well. Just by it's almost like, hey, you'll find out how much help he did have around him going into the season. Final thing before we cut over to break, Trinidad Chambliss talked yesterday. Not only did he not mention Coach Lane Kiffin by name, but also talked about not getting a spring last year compared to this year.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone outside about that. I wasn't here last spring, so I didn't get a chance to do spring ball and kind of get my feet wet a little bit. I was kind of thrown in the fire in summer ball, and then the season was right there. But it's good to have an off season, a full spring to get timing ready with my receivers. Take control of the offense this spring and create those connections with the receivers and new guys that we have. So definitely excited that I'll have a spring ball under my belt.